Holiday schedules can sometimes be the worst emotional and most contentious part of the whole divorce process.
And we've learned a whole lot through trial and error. Hey guys, I'm Rebecca and this is Davie, and we run the Divorce Hub. We also host an in-person group in Kansas City for people who are divorcing. We've got a lot of experience on the topic, from co-parenting counselors, actual divorce attorneys, and just real stories from the people that we help.
Yes.
And so as we were sitting at the counter today talking about what our holidays are going to look like this year, Davie was like, what if we just hit record on this? Because we have kind of developed a survival guide of what we're hoping to implement this year. And I think a caveat at the beginning here before we jump in is it's never going to be perfect. But today we're going to share 6 pieces of advice that we feel like would be a home run. If we could knock these out of the park this year, we just watched the World Series last night. This year with our divorce schedules around the holidays, like that would be a big win. And so we want to share those.
Yeah, and we thought of these in a few different ways in coming up with titles and things for this, but these are a survival guide. These are your life hacks. These are your shortcuts, things to think about as you go into what is a very triggering time for a lot of families already, which is the holiday season. You've got addiction and alcohol and family and divorce and all kinds of things that really trigger people. And then you layer in this. Here we go. These are the 6 things to consider when trying to survive the holidays and divorce.
Yeah. And number 1 comes straight from a divorce mediator. When I sat down at my first of several divorce mediations with my ex-husband, started off and somebody said something about a holiday schedule, and the mediator stopped us and she said, that's literally the last thing we're going to cover because I know it's going to be a disaster. And the first thing that she said once we got to the portion where we were going to talk about a holiday schedule, as I'm sitting there sobbing, is she said, the first thing I want you all to know, holiday schedules are an adult decision, meaning that you never ever go to your child and say, hey, buddy, who do you want to spend Christmas with? Or, sweetie, isn't going to grandma's house important to you? No. There's a variety of reasons that you don't put that on the kid's shoulders. Do you want to start off with one of them?
Yeah, I would just say the thing to think about is the joint households that you are going to as part of these traditions is one set of your parents. You're not going to go there as a family anymore. And so obviously, if you give the child the opportunity to say what he wants to do or she wants to do, she's going to do the thing that in her mind or his mind brings the family back together, which is go to the old traditions. And that's what they're going to say. And that's why these adult decisions about how we're going to go to who and who we're going to go to where. And there are some families that can do this, that can go still see family.
Yeah, but that's for the most part.
It's not the case.
Rare.
You're going to have to think of this specific subject to know that it's not a democracy, and the worst voters in that are the children.
Now, the other reason that you don't ever put a decision like holiday schedule or really much at all on the shoulders of a child is because inevitably when someone is sad in the process, or let's say we had this last year, the boys were leaving our house, Davie's boys were leaving our house on Thanksgiving, and he's like barely holding it together. We're going to talk about a switch day on the holiday later. Davie's barely holding it together. And of course, these emotionally intelligent children notice that no matter how hard you try, and they take that on themselves. If a child says, well, I want to go to Grandma Glenda's for lunch, and as they're walking out the house, they know that you're barely holding it together. Well, that becomes their responsibility. In their heads, they're like, man, I wanted to go, and now daddy's sad that I'm leaving. So one of the most important things that you can do is let the kids know that that burden of where they're at on the holidays, who they're spending the holidays with, the time frames are not their decision. And they may be upset about it. It may hurt them. But at the time, it will remove guilt. And that's what we want, is to raise kids who have happy, fond childhood memories. And one thing that we try to tell each other in these conversations is when we were married to our exes, we never sat down as a family and said, you guys want to go to grandma's this year? No, it was an adult decision. So still in a divorce, it's completely an adult decision what the holiday schedules look like.
Well, that's a good segue into my thing I'm going to cover here, which is that switch moment.
Number 2.
Right. Number 2. This is number 2 on the list. And it kind of it ties into the other one too, but try to craft a switch that isn't on the day of the holiday. And I want to say that slower. When you write your divorce plan, you're going to think on the holiday schedule, well, we both want to see the kid on holiday X, Y, Z, or ABC. And that's everything from their birthday to the most emotional holidays of the year. if at all possible, please avoid trying to do that.
And here's the deal. Davie and I, during his divorce and my divorce, we were dating at the time, and we went back and forth on this because in my old marriage, holidays weren't really a thing. We would just celebrate or we would go out of town as a nuclear family, and we really didn't have a lot of tradition. And so when he was going through his divorce, holidays were a big deal. I mean, they had the matching silverware and the napkins and all sorts of random crap that I didn't understand, but you were pretty tied to, well, I got to see the boys and I want them at least half the day, because what'll I do if I don't have them on Thanksgiving?
Yep.
And what we have found is that I was right.
Yes.
Through trial and error, though,
Through
because
trial and error, yeah.
last year, unfortunately, there were 3 or 4 switches on holiday days where you've got to think as a kid. And if you're new to divorce, and this is why you're watching this, switch days suck.
Mhm.
I don't care if it's a random Monday in April or if it's Christmas Day, the process of getting their stuff, packing up their items, especially on a holiday, is really hard. They dread it all day. Everybody's getting ready. You're anxious because you have to see your ex. I'm anxious because I have to see your ex. There's all these emotions that are around this. And putting those emotions onto a holiday, not good. It's not a good practice. And I would argue with anybody that said it was, because of how traumatic we have experienced it on 100 different fronts with 100 different families. Okay, keep going with your point.
Well, no, I'm glad you filibustered that, because this is an important one, because this is where a lot of the emotions are. So in some of these scenarios, when you write the divorce plan, when you write the holiday schedule, you're writing it for the old traditions,
Right.
right?
Right.
You're assuming that when you have that day of split, like in my previous marriage, there was a split of families halfway through the day.
That's how
My
you
family,
organized it.
her family.
Hers is in the morning, yours is in the
That's
afternoon.
not going to be
Whatever.
feasible now that you have a family that you've brought into my family, right? There's all kinds of other logistics. And so I have always seen that as a problem, but now I'm comfortable to say that just most of these holidays, and you're going to have a hard time convincing me otherwise, that there's a holiday that you need to switch on the day of.
Because it sucks so badly. And do we wish that we could say, hey, every Thanksgiving night, we're going to get all of our kids together and it switches at noon and that's great? That'd be so wonderful.
Yeah, that's wonderful, but it's not reality. And so this is something that I would say, whether it's their birthdays or one of these holidays, your new tradition might just be that every year your Thanksgiving's on that Friday.
Or if you don't want to do it that way, what you have to decide, and I know it's hard in the beginning of a divorce when you haven't ever experienced a holiday without your children, is you need to decide, would you rather have a consistent tradition where the kids know forever, even when they come home from college, Friday night is Thanksgiving dinner at mom and dad's house?
Mhm.
Or do you want to alternate every other year? And if you want to alternate every other year, fine. I think that's what we're doing at this point.
Mhm.
But really, if I could go back and rewrite it personally, I'd choose an off day. I'd say, give me Friday, Saturday, and you take the day of.
Right.
But everybody's going to have a different take on that. What we've experienced, and even today, I have a friend who was from a divorced family. She's 25, 26 now, and we were talking about this in front of her today. And she said, yeah, holiday switches suck. She goes, it's really sad to not see both parents on the holiday. But what was worse was packing up her Christmas toys halfway through the day and taking them to her dad's house. Nope. Nope.
I don't want to do that.
Nope.
I don't want to do that. I don't want their birthday, their Thanksgiving dinner, infused with that divorce drama, if at all possible. And look, again, if you're working things out with an ex and you have this amicable co-parenting relationship, you can just talk all this through, fine. What we're talking about here is thinking of these things when you're getting divorced and making sure your parenting plan that's written by an attorney is updated to reflect these little nuances and gaps that you're not thinking.
But here's what I would even say. If you've got a spouse that you're working, or an ex-spouse that you're working well with, was there ever a time, like me and my ex used to travel out of town to see his family every holiday? You never wanted to travel home on the holiday. That sucks. You get up and you pack your bag. So think about it like an 8-year-old child. Do you want to pack your bag up on Christmas Day, no matter how excited you are to go to the next grandma's house? Or would it be nice to be able to sit there and relax?
Right.
That's
Definitely.
my pretty staunch stance on it.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, let's talk about swaps and sites. Now, this is something that a lot of parenting plans outline really clearly is your ex allowed at your house on a holiday with a switch when there's logistics and people back and forth? And a lot of times that switch can get messy. We heard some advice recently that I'd like you to share because you're the one that heard it. Why don't you talk a little bit about I never drop my kids off?
Yeah, it's one of the many divorce experts that we follow or interact with, and his whole hack is make a rule that you'll never drop your kids off.
Why is that?
And it was this idea that I'm never going to drop you off somewhere. I'm always going to be here. I'm always going to be here where you left for that consistency and that regularity. So that I thought that was definitely moving to think about how a child perceives who's there, when, and how they get picked up and dropped off. Everything from where it is to who did the dropping off, who drove away first. All those little things that happen, they're psychologically evaluating
Ugh.
and trying to understand which parent is happy or not, mad or not, sad or not.
And it might be something that as your kids get older makes more sense, but especially with younger kids, we've got one who's 4 right now. And the idea that he is going to have in his brain, mommy and daddy drove away, we just don't want that.
Yeah.
Our 10 and our 8-year-olds, they know a little bit more like, hey, they're coming back, we're good. But to a 4-year-old, we really think we never drop off because we had to say things. And I did in the beginning of my divorce, mommy always comes back. Well, what if mommy doesn't leave and the ex either picks them up or there's a neutral location where we exchange? That's something that we got outlined really early on in my divorce for a lot of necessary reasons, is that we're just not at each other's houses. And there was a period of time where one of the exes was allowed in our home because we're trying to foster that good relationship. And what we realized is it wasn't safe for the kids. And not in like an emotionally abusive situation, but we would sit here in the front room and try to make small talk with the ex-partner. And the kid was like so anxious. I mean, he's like rolling around on the floor, spinning in circles. It was heartbreaking to see. And finally, we just had to say, hey, while we may be emotionally mature enough to handle being in the same room with the spouse, maybe it's not good for the kids. And so again, this is just our holiday survival guide. We always do swaps at the kids' school. It's a neutral location. It's close for both families. And it's something that way it's not like, oh my gosh, that's the quick trip that I always switched at. And that quick trip doesn't get bad vibes. It's just a school and it's a safe place where they go every day and it's normal. So that's a specification that I think is logistically important.
I just want to drive that point home too, because again, the holidays, there are travel issues. Kids forget things at one house or the other. And it's important to maybe not switch at the other person's house so that energy isn't brought into the rest of that family's holiday.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
whether you're protecting the house from the angry person showing up or the angry person being in the house, seeing the other person that's fine, but this person carrying a lot of anger, and then they pull that in, go to a neutral site. It's a reason why they call it a neutral site. There is a home field advantage that everybody reacts to, especially on the holidays. When you look inside the house, and that's the house I used to do Thanksgiving in, and I'm not there now.
Or maybe you've never been to the house, and the only time you get a physical peek into your ex's life and home, we have a good friend who, after her divorce, she's like, yep, my ex just bought a new house. She's like, I don't want to go in. That's his space. I never want to be in the home. And she was saying it in like a healthy way, like I want to be respectful of it.
Right.
But also that takes a really strong person to not be snoopy. You wonder what's going on in there.
Yeah.
How do they keep their house? Or, I mean, especially as a woman, you just have lots of questions.
Yeah, this whole idea of, again, working through, talking through, thinking through, and documenting the logistics of where you drop off is something that feels weird to have to think about, but you need to think about it.
Yeah. All right, number 4.
Find new traditions. Here's the idea. The house you went to, the food you cooked, the recipes you used, the type of gifts that you buy, your new decorations are all going to have to be new.
New traditions.
You're just going to have to find new traditions. And that might mean what you eat, when you eat it, or who you hang out with. That may mean a bigger group or a smaller group. It's just really important to intentionally say to yourself, hey, this is going to be a whole new family shape in our situation because we've blended our family. So I might have, been in a situation where if I was single for a while without you, I've got to create one layer. And then if you introduce a blended family, now you've got to integrate a whole new family who's unlearning their thing too. So I would just say huge, get experimental, be hokey, eat out, do takeout, get delivery, go to a restaurant on a holiday, give yourself some space. And I will say that with or without kids.
Yes.
Because if you don't come up with new traditions, whether you didn't have kids as a part of your divorce or you just don't have the kids that night, you could be sitting at a Ruby Tuesday pretty sad.
Yep, you've got to protect
Thanksgiving.
yourself and give yourself some people, places, and things to do. And one of the most important pieces of a tradition is to tell everybody in your life that that's what you're doing, because people do get very emotional around family and traditions and memories associated with it. So that's everybody from siblings to your parents to your friends, even to sit down and tell your kids. And the scripture to go something like this: hey guys, our family looks a lot different this year. A lot of our traditions are going to change, and I'm kind of sad about that. I'm also kind of excited about that. How about we make a list of the things that are important to us this year and try to check some of those off? How about a family bingo? What are 3 things you want to do this holiday season? And it can feel a little scripty, but also new things are hard. And making sure the kids know that there's some sadness and some joy in it, that's cool, right? We don't have to get it right the first year. Maybe we decorate Christmas cookies and that doesn't go so well. Great. You know what? Next year, no Christmas cookies.
You said something that made me think of the communication back to your own family too. I'm still 2 years into this process getting texts from my mom and grandma saying, bring the kids, well, this is when we're celebrating. And every time I have to respond, Mom, Granny, we don't have the kids that day. And that's tough for them.
Yeah.
And that is a layer of disappointment and shame and all the things that, as the person going through the divorce, you need to know that that's coming, because.
Well, that's point number 5.
Well, yeah. And if you don't know this stuff, right, down to a T, how would you expect any of your family members to know how these things work, especially in finding new traditions?
So let's parlay that right into point number 5. You have to, in a divorce, this is going to rub some people the wrong way, you have to prioritize your immediate family. If you haven't moved on and don't have a new partner, love that. You now are prioritizing yourself and your kids. You cannot logistically prioritize your spouse or your new home here, your ex-spouse's new home, their sets of grandparents who you did last year, all these sets of grandparents, and then when you add somebody in new, those logistics. It's just not going to happen. So go ahead and get really comfortable with the idea that this is the family tradition. And gosh, I know that's hard. And gosh, I know that's sad. But if you start to put the pressure on the holidays of that, think about it. You had 100% of a holiday schedule and it was packed. Now you have 50% of a holiday schedule. You can't cram your 100% in there. You can't do it. The logistics don't work. Davie's the king of logistics. Not going to happen. So you've got to prioritize your immediate family and what's important there. That might mean great grandma has to swing her presents by on a Thursday night.
And I'm even going to give a life hack inside a life hack just here in the 2 things that we're talking about here.
Sure.
Okay. So if you don't have to navigate swapping on the day of Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve or Christmas, and you've created these new traditions where Thanksgiving might be on a Friday and we always have Christmas Eve, it's going to be easier for your family members to understand that you have the same thing every year, as opposed to having to remember, oh, well, this year you guys had them in the first part of the day and next year they have them in the second part of the day. Once you can kind of blend these 2 ideas together to accept that you're going to have to make new traditions, right? And to avoid having to swap on that day, then all of this kind of cohesively works together. And you just have to make peace with the fact that you may not see your family at the same size or pattern. Kind of in a weird way, the most newest divorced family, they're the ones that get to pick the holiday schedule.
Well, yeah.
Okay?
And my mom,
I mean, that's what it has to kind of be. Your mom each time has said, what's your schedule? We'll build our family around that. That's kind of how it has to go in the short term.
If meeting with that family is important. Now, meeting with this is just a family example. Meeting with my family, my mom, my siblings, and those cousins is still a priority for us. What truly has gone out of the window post-divorce is my grandparents and those extended cousins. And that's hard because I grew up with those people and they were important to me. Those memories are fond to me, but that's not something I'm going to project on my kids to see their third cousins or Davie and his boys to move their whole life around to see an extended family, because what I've chosen to do is to prioritize my nuclear family. And that's hard and that can seem heartless to some people, but I'm telling you, the extra stress that it would be to try to see his great grandparents and third cousins and sisters twice removed, it's not the type of holiday tradition that I want my kids to have. And if I let you inside my brain a little bit long term, what I want is my kids, when they grow up and go to college and have families of their own, to be bonded to our traditions. And seeing my third cousins is not going to bring them back for a holiday schedule.
Right.
Maybe the traditions that we set will, Because what you have to think about is your kids, when they go to college, when they have families of their own, are going to have a choice to make on Christmas. Who are they bringing their kids home to see? Who has set up the holidays in a way that's special to them, that's meaningful to them? And we're being very strategic right now to make sure that we foster fond memories that aren't full of switches with Christmas presents and mom coming in crying. And like, we're being very strategic right now to set up holidays that are beautiful memories for our family. And that means some things have to go and some things have to stay.
Well, I'm looking at our last point, number 6 here, and I'm realizing it comes full circle. And our whole point for our content and sharing our story is to hopefully make adults' lives easier to navigate, because our whole mission here is that if we get people to not freak out during the divorce process, ultimately they'll be better human beings and make the divorce process easier.
Right.
But point 6, as it is today, is to prep your kids for big emotions. Because if navigating your family and the holiday schedules is tough for you as an adult, imagine for the new kid going through it. And that's something that's really important to realize, is that when insults about past transgressions and things like that are coming out, those little ears are listening.
Mm-hmm.
And that all that terrible stuff that you say is going to come back to their ears. So in this moment around the holidays, it's important to say, hey, if you're switching on actual Thanksgiving and it's noon, by the time you get to grandma's house at 12:30, you will not have the energy to say grace, little boy.
Yeah.
Right? You just need to decompress for a little bit. And that's another thing that I think is important. For the battles of divorce happen at these adult levels, but the kids see that. And so it's important to understand that they're going to be sad, not just because they're divorced, but the second half of the day, they got to say bye to the first half of their family that morning.
So, and I think you've talked around it a lot, but let's be really clear. Point number 6 is you have to prep your kids for these days. And that doesn't mean the morning of. Maybe it does, but I remember last year,
At least the morning of.
we set the kids down on the couch a few days before the holiday and we showed them a graph of what the holiday schedule was going to look like. And we said, hey guys, want to let everybody know that there are going to be big emotions around the holidays. There are going to be meltdowns, maybe from adults, maybe from kids. But what we want to know is whenever you see somebody melting down or having big emotions or maybe reacting to something in a way that they wouldn't normally react, that we call it out and we say, hey, I see you're really struggling with that. Come get us. So-and-so just lost their mind and hit the other kid. Come get us. And what we really did is prep the kids so that they knew on the day of, when they experienced big, crazy emotions, that they didn't have guilt or shame around it. And maybe we're a little more ready to ask for help, to say, Mommy, I don't want to go to grandma and grandpa's house right now. I'm really sad. And they're not walking in the door trying to fake smile opening presents. And so we did 2 things. 1, we prepped the kids for the big emotions. And 2, we gave everybody an emergency plan. And we said, you can throw in the towel at any point, kids, because adults can.
Yeah.
At any point, I could say, Davie, I don't want to do that. And you'd be like, I got you, babe. We're good.
Yep.
We gave our kids that right too. You don't want to decorate Christmas cookies with grandma like we've done for 10 years?
Great.
Perfect. Thank you so
Too
much for
of a
telling me
trigger.
that.
Yeah, too much of a trigger. Go ahead. I get it. It makes sense.
So try to create anywhere you can space on the actual day for meltdowns, for big emotions. Prep the family.
Decompression. They've got to be given time to decompress from a switch. For maybe it's your Christmas prayers that you say at night. Maybe it's the milk and cookies the next morning,
Right.
when mom or dad isn't there this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't expect the joy, the cadence of the joy of the past to continue. It's very different.
Setting reindeer cookies out this year. We're missing a parent.
Right.
We're missing a parent.
Right.
And it feels a certain way for the kids. So prepping yourselves, prepping the kids, prep the grandparents. Make sure everybody understands this from a child's view. And also, I want to prep you with this, and maybe we can finish up with give yourself some grace.
Totally. Give yourself some grace. And I want to end us on another positive note, because I want to tell one other quick story that I want to say that I'm just proud of. And that is when one of our kids saw another kid melting down in the family. It came through finally, because that older kid said, hey, sometimes switch days are tough. And that was a time that I realized that some of the preparations that you do in going into the holiday season and going into switch days and showing a kid how it's going to look so it's not scary or understood are some of the most important things you can do to start to paint the picture of normalcy for them too. them to see it, because there is some normalcy that can happen when you think about it and you're intentional about it.
Kids see it and they repeat it. So again, holiday survival guide. I can tell you not all 6 of these things are happening in our family this year,
Right.
but if we could prescribe it and say, this is what I think a really stellar holiday schedule would be, that's just some things that we've thought about. So we are so accessible. You can leave us a comment. You can send us a DM on any platform. We both have totally public profiles. And we really, truly do feel like we want to use our story to help people. So please, if you have a story, if you have a thought, reach out. If you hate what we said, tell us your perspective.
Yeah.
I'd welcome that as well. Thanks for tuning in.